Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are going to finish up with Sejanus' fall today by hearing from Nuntius and a little smidge from Lepidus, and then we'll chat about what we got from this play. And fair warning, today's monologue is going to be graphic. Yesterday's was also graphic. We are at the end of things, and as the title of the play suggests, Sejanus does not come to a very good end at the end of this play. So if you have a bit of a weak stomach, you might want to skip the ending of this one and just rejoin us tomorrow when we start in on a brand new play. So Act 5, Scene 10 is where we are, and Sejanus was called out in front of the entire Senate in a letter from Tiberius, who was like, Sejanus is maybe not the greatest person. Some of the choices that he's made were perhaps bad. So everybody who had been following Sejanus instantly turns on him. He's arrested, he's taken out, he is sentenced to death by beheading. They do that, and then the mob descends on his body. Oh, and this is after they've already knocked down his statue and they're dragging it through the streets and all these sorts of things. After he's beheaded, the mob descends on his body and rips it limb from limb, and they start, trading this bit for the other bit, and there's just bits of him scattered everywhere. So he's never actually buried anywhere, even though he's buried everywhere, if that makes any kind of sense. So the people who are left on stage, primarily Nuntius and Lepidus, are sort of thinking this is gross and maybe maybe deserved, but maybe not. That's maybe a little smidge of overkill. Nuntius is there too. He's the one that was telling the story. But then Nuntius comes in and they're like, "You have more news about Sejanus? What else could there possibly be? We already know that he's dead." And Nuntius says, "Then there begin your pity. There is enough behind to melt even Rome and Caesar into tears, since never slave could yet so highly offend, but tyranny, in torturing him, would make him worth lamenting. A son and daughter to the dead Sejanus, of whom there is not now so much remaining as would give fastening to the hangman's hook, have they drawn forth for farther sacrifice, whose tenderness of knowledge, unripe years, and childish, silly innocence was such as scarce would lend them feeling of their danger. The girl, so simple, as she often asked, where would they lead her? For what cause they dragged her? Cried, she would do no more, that she could take warning with beating. And because our laws admit no virgin immature to die, the wittily and strangely cruel Macro delivered her to be deflowered and spoiled by the rude lust of the licentious hangman, then to be strangled with her harmless brother. Oh, act most worthy hell and lasting night, to hide it from the world, their bodies thrown into the Geminies, I know not how or by what accident returned. The mother, the expulsed Apicata, finds them there, whom when she saw lie spread on the degrees, after a world of fury on herself, tearing her hair, defacing of her face, beating her breasts and womb, kneeling amazed, crying to heaven, then to them, at last her drowned voice get up above her woes, and with such black and bitter execrations as might affright the gods and force the sun run backward to the east, nay, make the old deformed chaos rise again to overwhelm them, us, and all the world. She fills the air, upbraids the heaven with their partial dooms, defies their tyrannous powers and demands what she and those poor innocents have transgressed, that they must suffer such a share in vengeance, whilst Livia, Ligdus, and Eudemus live, who, as she says, and firmly vows to prove it, to Caesar and the Senate poisoned Drusus. So this is hard. This is hard to take. What he's saying in the first half, before Lepidus says anything, in the first half of these monologues, it wasn't enough for the mob that Sejanus should be killed. They needed to kill his children as well. So they went and they got his children, who were too young to know what's going on. And the daughter, specifically, there was a law in the town that you could not kill a virgin. So they had his daughter raped, so that they would then be able to kill her. She was raped by the hangman, so then the two of them could be, the son and daughter could both be executed. And Lepidus is like, this is horrible, this is disgusting. So then the children's bodies were thrown into the Geminies, and somehow the mother, Apicata, found them. And of course, she's railing against the heavens and ripping her hair out and crying and pleading with the gods, all of these things, mourning the fact that she just lost her entire family, and specifically her children, in this really horrific manner. But then she turns her wrath on all of the other people around her, saying, why are my kids dead while Livia, Lygdus, and Eudemus are still alive? Because remember, Eudemus helped get Livia to go with Sejanus, and they had Lygdus deliver the poison to Drusus. So she's like, the three of them are guilty of killing Drusus, and they're still alive, and my children are dead at the bottom of a pit. How fair is that? And they're like, that's really not fair. And it was Lygdus that poisoned Drusus. Like, this is not good. And Nuntius goes on to say that the masses have actually now started to mourn for what they've done. They've realized that what they did was really horrific. And some of them have reverted to thinking that Sejanus was innocent and maybe a really good man. So nobody's feeling good. Nobody's feeling good at the end of this play. We even have Nuntius and Lepidus, who were so like, let's get Sejanus, let's get Sejanus. They're realizing how horrific an end he and his family met. And they're like, this should be, don't let anybody get too big for their britches. And Terentius ends the play by saying, like, yeah, people shouldn't think themselves above the gods, because things like this are bound to happen when people think too much of themselves. And that's the end of the play. So we wanted Sejanus to fall. We knew Sejanus was going to fall. Was it maybe a bit extreme? In general, this play, it's a little long, it's a little political for me. There's elements of it that do remind me of Julius Caesar, and maybe just because it's a political thing that happens in Rome, but it's all about the political power and somebody being too ambitious. Sejanus was too ambitious, Caesar was too ambitious. Caesar was just stabbed by all of his friends. Sejanus, we just heard about. And it's similar in structure there too, in that a lot of the big stuff happens off stage. So it's almost like a Greek tragedy. We don't see this actually happen to Sejanus. He's taken off stage and dismembered there, and we don't see his children, and we don't actually see the killing of all of the Agrippina people either, the people on her side of things. So it's a little long and it's a little wordy. It's not necessarily super poetic, except for when Sejanus decides that he's going to rhyme about stuff. That still gets me, that he spends so much of the play, especially while he's like twisting his evil mustache, he spends so much of it in rhyming couplets. Just a really interesting thing to consider there. And there's elements at the very end that also sort of remind me of Titus Andronicus, maybe just because of like the gore factor. But this does feel a little bit maybe in need of an editor, as opposed to some of Shakespeare's stuff. Shakespeare tends to keep things fairly to the point and keep things moving along, whereas this, some of it felt a little drawn out and repetitive, but maybe that's just me. I would love to know what you all thought of this particular play, and I apologize that it ends on such a massive downer. But tomorrow is new play day, and we're going to start in on Sir John Oldcastle. So I'll see you then for that. Mwah.